Alrighty, welcome everyone to a special edition of the Regulars. Tonight we've got a special question and an answer with Pinnacle's own Sean Roberson and Simon Lucas. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
We've got Sean Roberson, who is the lead writer and developer of Savage Rifts, and Sean Lucas, who is the executive producer of
Simon
Savage Rifts.
Lucas.
I'm sorry, Simon Lucas. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We look so similar.
Well, there's so many Seans.
I mean,
There's a
yeah,
lot of shows.
you guys could basically be brothers, right?
Basically.
So, just really quickly here to start us off a little bit. Love hearing about origin stories. You know, it's all the hits and all the Marvel movies and whatnot. So quickly, just for time's sake, so we can keep moving on tonight, can each of you kind of tell us a little bit on how you got into the field and where you are today within Pinnacle?
So I started working with Pinnacle originally with Shane as a supplier for a game that he was importing into the US. I was living in the UK at the time. And then from that, we worked closer and closer together. I ended up taking over and running Pinnacle while he went and worked in video games. So I ran Pinnacle for a few years around sort of 2005, 2007, through to Solomon Kane game. And then I moved over into video games as well for a few years. And then just last year, I've moved back to Arizona and I've started working with Pinnacle again. And I've started working with Sean on Savage Rifts.
As the executive producer,
It's a grand title.
Yep.
it is a great title.
Sean.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, I was in the military before, and after I got out, I decided to go back to school using my benefits, and so I attended. I thought I was going to do something like engineering or something, but I ended up going for my passion after some really great professors were like steering me in great directions, and I ended up attending University of Texas at Dallas and studied design and production for software and animated movies. The program does a lot of that, but I focused on game design, and so I took a lot of really great game design classes and writing classes, and I basically got like an associate's in visual design and then all that other stuff. And I was going to conventions because I love tabletop games. Even though we were studying computer stuff, right? And then I like happened to meet Shane at a game because my buddy Brandon, his dad works on is ETU. So I played the games with them, and they were like, come out and hang out with us. And then they were like, you should go to ChupacabraCon. And then I met everybody else that was involved with this with Savage Rifts, and I just was like, oh, this is great. And everybody was like, hey, yeah, send us some writing samples and some adventure, write an adventure, and we'll see how it looks. And at first I didn't hear anything back. I was like, oh, I guess, I mean, they paid me, but I'd never heard anything about back from them. And then and then they were like, one day I got an email from Shane, and he's like, hey, we would you like to work on a book? And so and it was the Coalition book at the time, and so I was like, yes. Like I talked to one of my professors he started with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, working for Gary Gygax and stuff, and so he's done a lot of stuff in the industry and then moved into video games. And he was like, yeah, these guys are legit, and the offer looks good, and they're very fair. And so I kind of like very cautiously stepped in, was like, I love Rifts. And
We've
then
just been loading more and more stuff onto him after that.
yeah, and then they're just like, okay, well, first they're like, it's 45,000 word manuscript, and it's like there's only like 8,000 words, 9,000 words, and the other ones are almost done, so you better hurry. And then and then they were like, okay, we want to do like 75,000 words, and can you help us wrangle this art thing? And then they were like, we want to do this conversion doc, and then that like blew up. From like, I mean, I'm joking. It was all very positive experiences, and I've had a lot of fun, and everyone's been great to work with, everyone. And so that's my story. Is it's actually morphed kind of behind the scenes over a couple of years while I was still finishing up my bachelor's degree in game design and production.
Awesome.
So.
And
cool.
Looks like Jody posted a link for ChupacabraCon, so if anyone's interested in attending that.
Great con.
Yeah.
Great con to meet people in the industry too.
Awesome.
The
Dare you, Dad?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Was I live?
So, would you mind giving a brief description for those people that are on the stream that might not know what Savage Worlds and Savage Rifts in particular are about?
Ooh, Simon, do you want to answer the Savage Worlds part, and I'll answer the Savage?
No, this sounds like a you thing. So Savage Worlds is a role-playing game that is designed to be able to handle pretty much any kind of setting. It's a generic role-playing setting. It's very easy to play. It's very fast to play. Things light for the GM, which is one of the main kind of guiding principles, was to make things easy for the GM to run any kind of set at all. And so it can handle everything from like fantasy role play to typical kind of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, all the way through to some of the craziest things you might expect to find in a Rifts game.
Yeah, and Savage Rifts. I mean, Rifts for Savage Worlds. Rifts is a crazy setting that basically leverages everything that Savage Worlds does really well, which is everything, and all the cinematic stuff you can do. But I mean, so seriously, the fantasy companion, sci-fi companion, horror companion, superpowers companion concepts, a lot of setting stuff, and then it brings to life this world that's this. I call it, for short, I call it the post-apocalyptic Avengers, because you've basically got this post-apocalypse, and then you've got Avengers power level with guys in power suits running around with super psionics and super magic users and demigods, and and then there's like Hawkeye. It's like, hey, I'm here too. And there you got your Mars characters like Hawkeye and Black Widow, but at the same time, that's the kind of power level of things that you're facing. So it's this really great game that with great power comes great responsibility, right? You're fighting these just like really world-ending types of threats after the world is the great cataclysm. The end of the world is there's a nuclear exchange that it just so happens to happen while there's a stellar alignment, and the psychic energy of everyone dying at the same time acts as like this ritual or seance that brings magic crashing back down to Earth, where it's been magic starved, and Atlantis comes plops right back into the ocean. There's tidal waves, more people die, and these lines of energy, this magic energy becomes visible, and where the lines meet, you get these nexus points where random tears in space and time will open, and who knows what comes crawling out. And so after 200 years of dark ages, then you have 100 years of the post-apocalyptic calendar, and humanity's starting to claw back to post-apocalypse civilization in North America, but now the Earth is inhabited by demons and monsters and aliens, which they call DBs for dimensional beings, right? That have come from these other dimensions. And you've got power armor and railguns and plasma weapons to fight dragons and demons. But then sometimes you just need a stick because you got to stake a vampire, right? So it's really crazy setting, but there's a lot of depth to it and a lot of great things going on.
Awesome. So a huge portion of Twitch's tabletop RPG community is Dungeons and Dragons. I know you talked a little bit about the setting and whatnot for Savage Worlds and Savage Rifts.
Wait, what game is that? I've never heard of that.
I know,
game.
Right? That should not be named, right?
No, I'm just kidding. It's like right here.
Yeah. If you were to let people know, those that are coming over, those that are fairly new to the system or whatnot, what are some things that your system shines at that you can tell them about that they may not be familiar with?
Okay. Well, I think Savage Worlds does some really great stuff that it adds to the mix. I mean, we leverage things like poker chips and poker cards to help keep track of things and have a lot of fun at the table, speed things up and simplify them. If you've played any tabletop war games, that's basically how our attack and damage model works. So you're not tracking a whole bunch of hit points. So it's really fun. It's really intuitive with the dice. The target you're trying to hit is always the same. The better you get at something, the bigger dice you roll. And then when it comes to the other thing that I really love about Savage Worlds is the adventure toolkit, all the different cinematic things you can do. I mean, I can play. That's what sold me too when I first played it. I tried it out, and I just used the test drive rules online, and I was able to try out a chase scene using a deck of cards, which I thought was insane. I was like, I don't even think it's going to work, but I'll try it because people were like, this is a cool system. And so I tried it out with my buddies, just reading the book and trying to do it at their kitchen table. Right. And we had so much fun. We had this like post-apocalyptic Mad Max car chase with people leaning out of their old, cars, shooting guns at each other. And then, we tried the mass battle rules. There's rules for massive battles. There's rules for dramatic tasks like defusing bombs. There's rules for social conflict. Now we've got the quick encounter rules, which I love using for like capers and heists. And you can just do so many things so swiftly. You can run massive combats that you would never want to run in Dungeons and Dragons or most other RPGs very quickly.
Yeah, I think in combat
all the stuff that
a huge difference where Savage Worlds shines is the agency that players have. Particularly as you were saying with the poker chips, the bennies that give you the opportunity for rerolls and to pull off cinematic stunts that perhaps would be really difficult to cover under some other rule systems. And then we have exploding dice for damage too. So you can go from a small hit to a gigantic hit with just a couple of lucky rolls. It's a fast system. It's a lot of fun.
So it's fun. Yeah, it's unpredictable. Yeah.
Those exploding dice have definitely saved us a few times.
more times than I can count. So I'm going to go off script here real quick. Got a question from Spotty Jungle Cat. Can we please get a plot point campaign book like Deadlands does for The Flood and others for Savage Rifts?
Like a whole book that's just a plot point campaign.
Plot point book, yep.
Yeah, so that's something that Shane and I've talked about a bit, and Simon, and I'm hoping we can do something like that because, at first we were really focused on like world books, right? But people were saying, I want a map of cities. I want a plot point campaign like that, and we did when we expanded the new 3 world books to 75,000 words. Shane was like, I want a plot point campaign. I want Savage Tales. I want more of everything, right? And so I guess he liked the original 45,000 word manuscripts. And so that's one of the things though that I look at a lot of these campaigns that are so legendary for Savage Worlds, right? That 50 Fathoms and all this type of stuff. And I really think there's a lot of opportunities to do stuff like that with maybe like Kingsdale or the Secrets of, a Secrets of Castle Refuge book or something like that. I mean, there's just so many cool things that I think that we'd really love to do that we really want to. I think there's just great opportunities for that. Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
Chris, you want to take next one?
Sure, definitely. So we know that you guys work with Fantasy Grounds. Is there any interest in doing anything official with Roll20 or whatnot?
So the Fantasy Grounds is one of the partners that they kind of do everything for us, so we don't have to really get involved in any of that. I mean, the virtual tabletops are something that we really enjoy. We don't actually have direct support for them, and Fantasy Grounds are able to just take all of the assets that we have and turn them into the assets that they need. So it's easy for us to work with them.
Okay. Awesome. And then
go ahead. Going back to more of the Savage World system, support. Now that there's been changes in the Suede version, we are using support all the time, and we're coming up with some very creative ways to use it, and we love it. It makes it so that when one player is doing something, the entire group is kind of in there with them, supporting them, and doing that. We use it on pretty much any type of skill roll. I mean, literally, it's like all the time. Are we using it too much, or is it really meant to go
Sounds
that?
to me like you're using it just right. I mean,
Okay, cool.
that's what it's the aim of it is to give characters who perhaps don't shine in combat a chance to still take part, to be relevant in any part of the game. But you can use it on all kinds of skill rolls, and it sounds like you're doing it just right.
Yeah, I love it, and I think it's great that it can shine a spotlight on that character's critical action, right? And it's still them making the roll, but it's the rest of the team interacting in what I think to be very cinematic ways, like when you have the drill sergeant actually uses intimidation to get the new guy to help him pull off the sniper shot, and it's just, but it works, right? And that's what I love about it is how it blends the storytelling and the mechanics so well, and I think it's great.
Yeah, it encourages creativity as well. Using your character's strengths and party working together. I think it's I love support. It's a great addition.
Yeah, and I love how it's been mixed into like the mass battle system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really good stuff.
Go ahead, Chris. Okay, go ahead, Craig. You want to ask the chase rules question?
Yeah, because I love chases. I mean, I'm sorry, I made a map for it. So chase rules, you mentioned that earlier, that you ran one of those. We love them. Me personally, I really love them. So we're running on Roll20, of course. I actually set up one of my maps as a chase map. I have all of my cards set out for the chase, duration, so we can just toss people on top of the different cards. How well have they generally been received, those chase rules?
As far as I know, they've been received really well. I mean, they've been through a lot of iterations through various versions of Savage Worlds, right? And we play tested the heck out of these, and I think they came out in a really good spot. They can handle a lot of stuff. They do it very, very easily. It's kind of cinematic. It allows you to do a lot of cool different types of chases with the same set of rules. I think they've been handled really well, and people like it.
Yeah, we love them. It's been fun.
Definitely. Oh, go ahead.
I want to hit the Mars questions just because, I have so many questions about this. We have a couple of questions regarding Mars, which of course is Savage Rifts. It's how, well, I'm sure you can say it better than me, but it's how you handle the non-Savage Rifts characters in Savage Rifts. So, while there are general rules for Mars conversion of characters created using other Savage World settings, are there any plans for a more in-depth sort of Mars conversion worksheet or guide?
Simon, what'd you do with that? I wrote it.
Thanks, Sean. Is that a bus?
No, absolutely. So I've talked about this on different forums and platforms. People have been asking about it, and I think it's great, right? I think that's the coolest part is you got to work with your GM a little bit, right? I mean, you got to apply a little bit of logic to it, but I think the idea that, hey, I'm going to take the coolest crap I love out of this one setting, right? Like Deadlands or the Last Parsec or whatever, and I want to bring it in to Savage Rifts. I mean, yeah, man, go knock yourself out. And so we've got a write-up, and we need to update it with some of the updates that have happened after the playtest has been progressing. But you should be seeing that. I think we're going to find a spot to squeeze it in.
Yeah, Sean wrote it, and then I cut it, and then we talked about it again, and it's going to be going back in.
Yeah. So I think it was actually I mixed it in with some other stuff that there was just a miscommunication. Also, I mean,
these updates for the Sway books. There's more than just making some changes for the new rule set. Sean's finding ways to add all kinds of additional material, and so space is tight in these things. They were full already, and so
I kind of shoehorned in a lot of stuff, to be
we're
honest.
working hard to get stuff put in.
I don't know if you guys noticed the expanded equipment tables, but I'm kind of naughty.
All right, so a second Mars question, and this one's a little bit involved, so it'll take a little while before I get to the actual question.
Roger that.
So, at least from our experience, the Mars characters seem to be a little, well, way behind the other iconic frameworks. In the most recent playtest document that seems to be out right now, they lost 4 edges in the form of 2 of their Fortune and Glory rolls, which seem to be about worth 2 edges each, where the other iconic frameworks only lost 3 edges, with the fact that they're down 3 of their hero's journey rolls. Even with the boosted rank to start, in our experience, Mars tend to be weaker than the other iconic frameworks. Is that on purpose?
So, and just to make sure that I've got it clear, you say that you thought that they were weak. Did you think that they were weak before the Suede playtest rules as well?
Yes.
Okay.
They felt like they were a little behind. Sorry.
And just so anybody that's listening understands, so in Savage Rifts, in Rifts for Savage Worlds and Rifts, you've got Glitter Boys, you've got Juicers, you've got Crazies. These are all augmented humans or characters wearing like legendary suits of mega powerful power armor that have survived through the 200 years of Dark Ages and basically saved mankind from obliteration in North America. And then you've got psychics that are so powerful they're called mind melters, and pyrokinetic bursters, ley line walkers that can literally float on the magical energy line, and they're just masters of magic. And so then you've got these Mars characters, which stands for mercenaries, adventurers, rogues, and scholars. Every once in a while I call it scouts, but I meant scholars. And so these are all iconic Rifts character types. But how do you have a scientist, a scholar that he trucks in illegal information, history that maybe the coalition states don't want their citizens to know the truth about, or a wilderness scout? How do they hang out with big boys like the Glitter Boy and stuff? And so again, this is the kind of the how does Black Widow or Hawkeye or characters like that hang with Thor and Captain America, or Doctor Strange? So this is a really quintessential question. So we've got a lot of interesting feedback. So when it comes to certain builds, like when you're building, say, an arcane background character that uses psionics or magic, one of the big things that we got feedback on was that they were actually better than ley line walkers and mind melters when you built them up, because of the amount of edges that you get from advances since they start a season. So that's one side of the feedback. We got all types of feedback, right? But that is one thing that we're considering. The other thing is that in this, you say, all the iconic frameworks got 5 heroes journey rolls. Well, not all of them did. And that number varies. We've pared it down and basically made it pretty consistent to 2. And for the hero's journey rolls, which are worth about 2 character build points in general. And then yes, there's been a leveling pass on those for their character build point worth, and a little bit of work done on the Fortune and Glory roll. So part of that is finding that right power level. Also, I don't know if a lot of people noticed, but a lot of the Mars characters now have special abilities for most of the Mars characters, and we're basically finishing that out with a couple of them after player feedback. I think it's been a very popular addition to make sure that the Cyberdoc and the Body Fixer have something up their sleeve, right, that's special about them. And we're going to do the same thing with like the power armored Ace and the robot armor, or the robot vehicle Ace. But the other thing that happened is that the amount of build points for the characters actually increased. So most of them, and it's been leveled, most of them are worth about 16 character build points instead of the previous 12 to 14. So there was an increase there. So that, just so you understand the basic math that we're considering. And we did reduce it to one Fortune and Glory roll and 2 Hero's Journey rolls. But we are actually, the next update is going to have 2 Fortune and Glory rolls, and we're going to be expanding the Fortune and Glory table. So I do agree.
Okay.
We've had a lot of great feedback. It's a lot of it can be subjective when you want to start applying numbers to a lot of this stuff, and it can also get tough when you're like, okay, well, am I using Superpowers companion math on build points from Deluxe in Sway, right? So getting it, so, but we've got some really great players that have been giving us a lot of great feedback, and this is part of the reason why we want to do a public play test. And so I think we're going to find that sweet spot, and I think we're going to make sure that it's really that Mars characters are just as iconic when you build them out. And that's the goal, is that they're just as interesting to play as any of the other characters, and that they are balanced. But if you have a glitter boy, no one should be able to be a glitter boy. That's the point of playing a glitter boy. The Leyline Walker, now we have a lot of specialized character abilities. Same with the Mind Melter, that they are very different now. And there's a reason to play a Leyline Walker instead of just playing a Mars character that takes arcane background magic and a bunch of new power edges, right? There's a reason to play a Mind Melter instead of just taking a Mars character and just getting as many rolls as you can on these charts, so that you can be a better psychic that starts at seasoned. So that's been something that we've been very carefully considering, and so I think that there's going to be a lot better balance there. But at the same time, you're not a dragon. You're not the cyber doc, the city rat. They're not the vagabond. I mean, you literally can play a hobo, right? So they are not meant to just go get in a pissing contest with a hatchling dragon on who can fist fight better. But I think there's a lot of places, especially with Savage Worlds and the Adventurer's Toolkit options with chases and dramatic tasks and social conflict, where you're going to see them really shine. And that's part of I think you're going to really love the stuff that's coming in the 3 new world books, because the plot point campaigns, the Savage Tales, have all of that ready for players to take advantage of.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly fair to say they're never going to match on raw power, but Sean's putting a lot of work into making sure they're still interesting characters to play. They still have their play. There's still stuff that they're going to be able to contribute. So we're still working hard on that. You'll see that in the next version of the playtest doc.
The other thing is you're going to see a lot of we have a lot of frameworks coming in the new world books. So there's some cool stuff. I mean, just to be honest, these are, a lot of these are iconic riffs ideas that we're just interpreting, doing our best to interpret, right? And a lot of great authors have worked on these books. But like one that I wrote up is the Commando, right? This guy's supposed to be able to go, I don't know if you guys remember hand-to-hand Commando, right? In Rift, that's like a thing, right? Because you get that automatic dodge, that sweet automatic dodge like the juicers, right? So, with the dodge edge and Brawler, the Brawler edge, starting out with stuff like that at the get-go, you've got a character that he starts performing at pretty mean levels, especially if he's got the drop on his opponents, because he's also got Assassin. So, so we've got a lot of cool stuff. The Gunslinger has a way to get the drop on opponents when at the beginning of a combat with a quick draw. So there's a lot of cool stuff where, they may not be, a 2-ton full conversion walking tank cyborg, but they're gonna really do some cool stuff, and you could really run campaigns where everyone's just a bunch of Mars detectives running around the coalition burbs trying to solve crime. I mean, you could do anything with these new rules.
Awesome. So speaking of rules, one of the common difficulties in dealing with some gaming companies is having source material that's spread out through a plethora of books, similar to kind of how Palladium Books does. Do you have any plans to kind of consolidate information once you build up your library and create potentially compendiums or develop some kind of tool like an advanced table of content or something where players can find out where information is and maybe purchase it a la carte or whatnot, or maybe some kind of online tool that people can utilize?
Simon, I can answer the basics, but
And yeah, go for it.
well, I mean, so right now, one of the great things that I think that anyone should be able to enjoy, whether they, I think that, man, with all the new art, we've got some great art and maps,
Yeah.
and we've got some great adventures. I, I'm really surprised if a lot of players that play Palladium Rifts. I mean, we tell people to go get the Palladium books if you want to read more background material, right, about the world. We literally cite the books that we're drawing from in these new world books for Rifts for Savage Worlds, and it's vice versa. I think there's a lot of stuff that Palladium players could come to because, for instance, Empires of Humanity, I condensed like I don't know, like 12. I think I stopped at 12 books that I listed at the beginning of the book, saying this is the stuff. I felt like this weird archaeologist going through 30 years of game writing
Yeah.
by all these authors, and then trying to connect the dots, right? Because you
Right.
have, say, you talk about a settlement in the Simmons line in Texas, or the or Port, Horace or whatever in Riffs, you
Lone
know,
Star.
on Lone Star and Underseas and all this stuff, and
Hmm.
CS Navy, and then we don't talk about it again, right? And then we're set in 19PA, and then we hear this other stuff that's going on. So how does that all jive? And so that's one of the things that, and the thing that I want to emphasize is that, I mean, Kevin and I had long conversations about this. I came to him with notes. I emailed him pages and references, and he was looking at my manuscript, and we discussed things to make sure that this is riffs. So one of the great things about these new books is you have this snapshot in time of 109 PA in these books about North America that I think any Riffs fan could enjoy. That we've taken like the big ideas, the really important information, and put it all in there. We tried to hit you guys have seen that beautiful Pinnacle map of North America that was
Yeah.
the Kickstarter extra. Well, we basically every dot on that map has a story now, at least a blurb, so you know what's going on there. A lot of them aren't even there, and we're trying to update everything, right, to make sure we got everything we can there. We tried to, I mean, you can't finish North America with 3 books, even if they're 192 pages, but we're trying to do the big sweeping pass, and later we can come in with great adventure content and source content. But at the same time, each of these books is going to have iconic frameworks, Mars frameworks, edges, equipment, right? Monsters, adventure material, lots of adventure material. Great. Each one is going to have a plot point campaign in Savage Tales. And I don't know how to really like consolidate that except for digitally later on. But I do know that navigating these PDFs is awesome. I love
Hmm.
it. So having the where you can just click on the page number when it talks about something and it shoots you over there, that's been one of my favorite features. So hopefully we're moving in that right direction. I don't know what will come in the future, but I think that for a lot of Rift players, this is the consolidation of what is Rifts for
Oh,
America.
absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, we've all had that thing where we have to dive into the source book and then a rifter and then somewhere else. Yeah. Pretty soon you've
Well,
got
we
a
draw
huge
the
stack.
yeah, we basically draw the line at the official. Not we don't do the Rifter. We draw the line at the world books and the source books. But because I mean, there's so much, right? And we want to make sure that it's
Exactly.
consistent, and those are pretty consistent with each other. Um, so that is something that I think that though that there is that general overview of the lore. But if you read about it, we're telling you where to go look it up if you want to get deeper into it.
Okay. So, thank you. And I so far I've, I actually have agreed with a lot of decisions, which is hard for someone that literally owns all of the old books. So I'm really excited about, the decisions that you're doing, and that kind of brings up one thing about how to explain the game to newbies. Like, is there plans for Pinnacle to have a quick start guide that has a sample combat, and maybe even more specifically for Savage Rifts, because Rifts is honestly very different than a lot of the other Savage World settings.
So we always used to have the test drive rules available, and that I don't think that's been updated for a Suede edition, but
No, it hasn't.
that's something that might happen again.
Yeah.
In terms of something that's maybe more visual, we don't have anything right now. The Wildcards guys have said that they're going to put together like an introduction, a video introduction, and how to play. So that would be something that may happen down the line. It would be a great way to see how to play, what you played, and get an introduction to the game.
And for Rifts, just to let people like into the world, because it's such a big world, I have written an adventure that I've been running at cons about you start off as Nema troopers, right, in 2098. Merry Christmas, right? And when the world ends. And so, and it's kind of one of those, it's meant to be a one shot, everybody dies, possibly, right? But, and then I've talked to Kevin, we just want to make sure that the licensing is all clear and everybody's happy with that. But he's been very positive. And so that's something that I would like to do eventually, but, obviously want to finish the 7 books right now.
No, agreed.
Right. But I mean, first
one of the things about Savage Worlds generally, right, is that the best way to learn it is to play, and you can find a game and jump in. You're going to be a master of it in no time at all. It isn't difficult.
Yeah,
and
it isn't.
Maybe Rift a little more so because you've got so much stuff your character can do. But I think the best way is to play.
And with that adventure, I did design it so that it's basically at your a little lower level, power level, compared to like say a full-fledged Mars or something like that. But at the end of the adventure, if your character survive, there's a way that you can now complete their hero's journey with these roles, and you can play this character in Rifts or go do a different character, right? So I think that the setting is hard to just encapsulate in a few words, right?
Yeah, and we recently had someone step in at the last second because our GM couldn't run, and he stepped in and felt that the whole thing was really easy to pick up and go with. So I think it's easy as well. But I have had people say, "Hey, where's a quick start guide?" So
Yep,
that was the reason for that.
just beat a 4, right?
I mean, the test drive rules, the deluxe test drive rules are pretty applicable still. I mean, it'd be great to have it updated sometime, but I have had no problem. I've run a lot of con games, and I mean, I'm running Rifts. I mean, it's a lot of stuff going on, and the players themselves really can just jump in and have fun. I mean, just teenage girls, young boys like Cub Scout age with their dad. I mean, we just had fun. We had a blast. And I've never had a problem even with Rifts for Savage Worlds in settings like that with completely new players that some of them have never even played a role-playing game. And we just all had a blast. So the rolling the dice, handing people bennies, drawing a card for your initiative. I mean, that's just fun and it's simple. And so I think that Savage Worlds is very easy to get into. So hopefully people just don't sweat it too much. Just dive in and have fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just off the top of your head, what's the youngest player you've ever seen be able to pick the game up?
I've played with my children, so that's like 6.
Nice.
Awesome. There you have it, guys. 6-year-olds can play it.
I had an 8-year-old with his dad. I think it was 8 or 9.
One of the chat people says that the 7-year-old got it right away. So
yeah,
cool.
I think it's easier than
Craig. You want to get the next question, or is Craig frozen?
I think he's frozen.
Yep.
Okay. So we have found that in our little time playing this, that extras are very easy. Some of that might just be that we happen to know our characters pretty well, but we wonder what balance between extras, wild cards, how do you manage that, and how do you think that should be run?
Well, now one thing I want to point out. So if you go to, so if you've got, well, when you receive your Adventure Edition,
Sean's showing off. He has one of the only 2 copies.
but if you go, there's resilient and very resilient on page 188. And so I think that's something to throw in there. If you need, like, say you've got the Coalition Lieutenant or something is a wild card, but you're like, this Sergeant, I don't want to just be an extra. So you can make him resilient or very resilient. Hey, maybe throw a wild die, right? A Benny or 2 of his own. I think that's a way to deal with, that's one way to deal with that. Another thing that I was discussing with Beacon of the Voice of Hope podcast, we were talking the other day, and there's a lot of setting rules that you can apply to Savage Rifts that sure we didn't list. I mean, we could have just listed like every setting rule, right? But we just wanted to have a standard list. But for instance, the Fanatics rule, where you can have the bad guy, an extra dive in front of an important wild card or another important extra. If you wanted to, you could modify that, right? So whatever is going to fit your game and your narrative, I think make sure you keep all those things in mind. Because
I think you got to bear in mind what the story, where you are in the story, right? I mean, if it's one of these early combats, you want to just it's there to make the players feel powerful and to blow through a whole bunch of extras and move on to the next thing. But even extras, they can gang up, they can use tests, they can net support. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff you can do using your 1 or 2 wildcards to support extras and make them a lot stronger. They aren't such a pushover.
Well, and an extra in a robot, a couple of extras in a robot vehicle, like a UAR-1 Enforcer, well, that's scary,
Yeah.
And don't forget the bennies too for general use, and then specifically for wild cards when they are introduced. And so keep that in mind as well, because the GM needs to be using his bennies, and that adds a dynamic feel to things too.
Yeah, and I put in chat Beacon, the Voice of Hope podcast is a good Savage Risk podcast.
It's great. It's wonderful.
With them, so Craig.
He might be frozen again.
Yeah, it looks like technical difficulties. He's not.
Okay.
He's very still otherwise.
Yeah. So I'll hit another one real quick. How liberal should trappings be, and how much should they change spells or psionics? I will tell you that I play a techno wizard in our game, and we have done things like create a video, a camera that was worn as a pin by Hippo's character that streamed directly to Castle Refuge. We've kind of gone pretty crazy, and we love it, but some of this is a question on is that the right way to go? Should they be that liberal?
Do you want to talk about trapping?
Well, my feeling generally is that they shouldn't modify the powers too heavily. I mean, the give a
I think we're having technical difficulties.
Okay, so Simon had technical difficulties. Okay, that wasn't just me.
You gave it to him.
I mean, I don't know exactly what his answer is going to be, obviously, but I know that the general sway design philosophy is we went away from having specific power type effects, and now you choose those as modifiers. You want to slow someone down with your blast or your ice blast. I mean, when you pick the power, you should choose the trapping if it's wind or ice. But you can still add those power modifiers when you're casting it. So now it can do those different things. But with the Techno Wizard, I mean, that's really up to the GM, right? Because the Techno Wizard literally has access to his entire power list day one to make stuff with, which I think is a very overlooked ability. And And so I think that you've got to balance that and be careful. I would be careful about, I mean, if it's necessary for the plot, then do it, right? I mean, in my plot point campaign, there's a point when the characters are pretty far from Castle Refuge, but I want them to talk to Castle Refuge and give them a report. So they were able to access a radio tower at a certain point, right? And normally that, you know, you just don't have that kind of radio range in Rifts. And so I think that, you know, some of that comes down to that. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of the powers, I mean, that's one thing we were very careful about with the Mystic, was making sure that we didn't have these trappings. You know, now they're power modifiers. We reskin them that way. But
Okay.
that they didn't reproduce other powers, other abilities, or other special abilities. And I think that's, you got to be really careful with that. And if you do it, you need to do it intentionally, right? So because if everybody lights people on fire like the Burster, why are playing the Burster then, right? And so now, but if when you chose the power, you chose a fire trapping, and now you're fighting someone vulnerable to fire or that's flammable. That's it. This is your chance to shine, right? To get some bonuses out of it. That's my feeling on it. Sorry,
I said
you cut
exactly
out,
what you
Simon.
said.
Okay, cool. I didn't know what your answer would be, but I picked up from where I know Shane's talked about some stuff, and we've all had discussions
Sure.
about it. So, any other questions there, or is that clear to you guys?
Oh, you're,
You're
Victor.
muted.
No,
and this is
that's fine. That's perfect.
cool. And that, I mean, there's an edge for that now, right? Where you can switch your power trappings. With the Elemental Fusionist, you guys will see that very soon. I mean, that's the thing about the Elemental Fusionist. You're unlocking different trappings that are available, and then combining them into trappings that are novel for the character. And so the different elements that you have access to, the trappings you have access to, is part of what your progression is about.
Cool. So we lost Craig again. So extra effort. What was the thought of taking it away? And it is definitely one of the reasons we're using support so much.
Right.
But just curious as to the reasoning that it was taken away.
Well, in this case, I wouldn't say that it was. This is the way I look at it. I don't think it was taken away. We have conviction now, and I think that conviction is, I mean, it's essentially the same mechanic. You just earn it a little differently, right?
Mhm.
And you can keep it between sessions, so you can build that up. And I mean, full respect to the original design team, I thought it was a great idea, and I think it's a testament to that when you see basically a setting rule that enshrines it with some really cool new story mechanics, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, we're swayed, right? And I want to keep things simple, but I also think that I really like that twist on it with conviction. So that's the direction that we decided to go, and I think it's good. I don't think that I think that, you know, it's a great way. I don't think it's taken away. I just think it's changed form a little bit, in my opinion.
Cool. Yeah, no, when we've been doing some conviction stuff, and the carryover was key in one session, so that was really cool.
And I like the idea of giving someone a cool token for it, right? I mean, that's awesome. And if you prime your players right at the beginning of the session, just like you do for bennies, hey, another thing, people, you know, that are listening, if you've played other games like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, then one of the big differences that people enjoy when they come to Savage Worlds is you have hindrances for your characters. You don't have to take them. They limit your choices. So like being honorable, having a code of honor, or heroic, or curious, like curiosity killed the cat type curious. These are things that are negative. You know, they give your character these negative hindrances, but you get some extra build points to buy some cool new stuff, abilities for your character. But when you role play them, when you role play that flawed character, they have a little bit of hubris built into them. You get bennies. You get bennies, or you can get conviction, right? If you do a great job. And so I think that if we prime players for that, then I think we'll see these things being just as ubiquitous as discussions about extra effort was with the original edition of Savage Rifts, in a very positive way.
All right, am I audible yet?
Ah,
Yep.
there you go.
Yay!
You're back.
He does speak.
And then he froze again.
I,
Oh, no, he's back.
I
Oh,
went
oh.
with push to talk because apparently,
Nope.
maybe.
Okay. Chris, you want the next? Go ahead and ask the next one then.
Okay.
Man down, man down.
Yeah. Well, I want him to ask that one. There's one that really intrigues me. What
Go.
what can you guys tell us about the new Necromancer? Are we gonna have our undead legions follow us around, or what do you guys got in store for us?
Oh yeah. So it's awesome. And I don't want to now that wasn't the book that I helmed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to speak, but I think that Sean Bircher was the one that did a lot of the design there. I know the Birchers did a lot of work on the other two books, but there was a lot of other authors that contributed. So I just don't want to misattribute something. But yeah, they did a really good job designing that. And the Necromancer has some really great stuff where you've got phylacteries, so you can store the extra PPE to build to summon your army or keep it running, right? And we also there's rules for building your mummies and your secret army of powerful mummies. Just like was it? Oh man, I'm gonna totally hatchet job his name. Was it Nektal? He's the Reeds
You're on your
Ranger
own,
Necromancer. The Reeds Ranger Necromancer, Nektal Plankton or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
I can't. I've just. It's a crazy name.
Yes.
But he's awesome, right? And these Rangers stuff in the original books, and we touched on a little bit, but he's got like this in warehouses full of like of mummies in like body armor with some light weaponry and stuff. That's like this secret army that Reed's Rangers is building up for the apocalypse against the vampires, and they're going to fight undead with undead. I just love stuff like that, and you're going to be able to
that's awesome.
crazy stuff like that. And it's it takes time. It'll take a little bit of forethought and planning and building, right? Literally, you're making your minions, but I think it's going to be cool. And I think the art. Oh, we got some stunning art for you saw that in the I'm sure the Kickstarter art.
Yeah.
We shared that with the Dia de los Muertos theme for it. And then the Necromancer is really cool too, because they actually get permission from the dead to use their bodies, their corpses, to defend their families and their friends and stuff. So it's a really cool take on a Necromancer. I think that's a lot of fun.
I'm really excited about it.
Well, plus there's the Suede rules where now you can animate really big stuff as undead.
Oh man.
So hello Game of Thrones, right? So
So have you play tested it all? What's the biggest thing you've seen converted?
I'm sorry, you cut out there at the end. The biggest thing
that you've brought back as an undead, or have seen.
I have not personally play tested the Necromancer.
Okay. All right. So after this current 3 gets released, and if I recall, December, right, is the target.
Cool. We're cranking on it as fast as we possibly can. I mean, it's 3 new books, but we're also 3 of the updated books as well.
The updated,
and
right.
the
It's a lot of work.
The 7th stretch goal book.
Yeah, and a stretch goal book. So it's 7 books. We're forging ahead.
The Magnificent Seven.
That's the main thing.
So not to downplay that, but everyone keeps asking what world books are coming next, and I know Sean mentioned that he's going to put his group into South America, the land of 1,000 islands. So I'm kind of curious as to, have you guys already thought out what the next set of books are going to be?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've been talking about for a long time. And the Birchers and we just sat down at ChupacabraCon, I remember, and we're just like giddy over, well, I want to do this and I want to do this book. I'll write that book, and I'm like, I was a Chinese analyst. I was a Chinese linguist and analyst. I have a associates in Mandarin Chinese, and Was a missionary in Taiwan for 2 years. I really want to do the China book, but I think we need to take baby steps to get there, and to go in a similar arc to how Palladium originally approached it. So the next thing I want to do is an Atlantis and the High Seas book.
Okay.
And so now I don't want to, as you get into design and layout and stuff like that, who knows if it's like, there's too much Atlantis, I can't do the High Seas too, or something, and but that's the
one of the things we're pretty keen as well is to make sure that it's one book at a time, and not we're doing 3 books at a time. So
right. Because we want to have a steady, positive release schedule for you guys.
And there's only one show.
But at the same time, we also want to have other adventure material and stuff like that coming out as well for you guys to play and have fun with. But yeah, I think that Atlantis and the High Seas is what I hope we can do, because if we, you got to get to Atlantis, right? And then go through the demon seas and all that. And then, okay, well, if we cover pirates and high seas, and I don't know if we'll, hopefully underseas, I just want to make sure we do it right when we do something. But if we cover the high seas and Atlantis, well, now you can get anywhere, right? You can get to South America, you can get to Britain, you can get to Europe, you can get to Africa, right? So that's kind of the arc, is to finish off basically the Western Hemisphere, do like Atlantis and the High Seas and South America, and then move east from there. That's the general broad strokes plan. And you'll see, if you look at the teaser images we had, I mean, it's pretty much on the Kickstarter. I think that's pretty much what we.
Okay. And would that include Lemuria and New Navy and all of that?
Yeah, that's why I say I'm not sure if we could do all the underseas too. I mean, there's just so much, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I don't want to do something. I don't want to shortchange something too much. But I mean, obviously, we would include information about it, maybe, but maybe not have a full. Here's the loadout for the New Navy, and all their stuff. But we'll see how we can do that and best approach that. But I think a lot of that stuff too, if we can hit the big beats, and then we can have adventure content where you can have a plot point campaign that centers around one of those really iconic factions, or like the New Navy and their whole mobile fleet, right? If it's a mobile faction, I mean, that's just amazing, right? So there's stuff like that. I think that there's opportunities to hit that as well in the future.
Yeah, the Twitch chat's going crazy. Tattoo Magic, Katani Serpent Power Armor, Sleuthor's Juicers. Yeah, they're
right. And this is the thing that I don't want to do Atlantis wrong. I don't want to we did Atlantis, but we didn't really do Atlantis, right? Because there's so much awesome stuff there. I mean, and the Slugor Slaver, and that's the iconic image on the cover of Rifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love Atlantis. I want to do it right. And so it just really depends on the exact page count and all that kind of stuff, how much we can fit, because you ask Simon, I'm pretty good at shoehorning in as much as I can. And he's like, I thought we were going to do an expanded, reference table at the end of the book. Nope. And the question is, hey, man,
those 2 pages are now full.
Yeah. And then your question, do you want a better reference at the end of the book, or did you want the Coalition Juicer, the Coalition Cyborg Strike Trooper, the Coalition Commando, and the Coalition Ranger?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, let's drop a couple of index pages. And I don't. I mean, it's just you gotta make choices, right? So, these are things that but it would have limits. But yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. I'd love to be able to cover at least basic high seas rules in the Atlantis book.
Cool.
And move from there.
Craig, are you actually live again?
No.
Nope. Okay.
One day.
Are there... How do you decide which OCC conversions archetypes you do? There's as we've talked about, there's so much material. How do you decide which ones to bring in and which ones to leave on this?
It's tough, because sometimes you got to ask yourself, okay, and there's a big update coming with factions, by the way, that we're We'll see where I can fit that. But
sense more work on the horizon.
yeah, but we want to do it right, and we want to lay the right foundation for future stuff, right? And for instance, let's take the Justice Ranger. Well, what's a Justice Ranger? Is it a gunslinger? Is it a partial reconstruction cyborg? Right? What defines him? Is it this faction edge that he has that really defines? Because there's the crazy slingers, right? The wired slingers, gunslingers, and all this stuff. So sometimes it's like, okay, well, can I do this? And we just have an iconic edge that we can kind of do that. Like, for instance, the ley line, you have the ley line walker, and then the ley line, in Ultimate Edition, what was it called? Ley line rifter. Well, the ley line rifter really only has like 1.5, 2 iconic abilities that he has that really differentiates him from a ley line walker. So that's now an iconic edge in Arcana and Mysticism, or no, it's in Blood and Bands. Anyways, so that's kind of the decision process. How different is this from the other iconic frameworks or Mars frameworks that we already have? And then and you want to look at the lore and make sure that people still we're playing Savage Worlds. I want to err on the side of giving people the ability to make the most expansive or interesting characters they can. And so, but sometimes that turns into an iconic edge, like Reed's Ranger or the Justice Ranger, or not an iconic edge, but a professional edge or a faction edge. Instead of having it be a full build loadout of Mars framework. And guess what? If we can keep that to an edge, a faction edge, then that means that I can include another Mars framework that I wouldn't have had space for otherwise, right? And there was something like in early write-ups, there was the Psyslinger was an edge that a power edge, and now it's a Mars framework. From some of the early feedback I got from people, and so that there some of that's trial and error too, right? But that's the main considerations, and then the other thing is, well, what's the theme of the book? So, for instance, with Blood and Banes, this is the dark side of the Tomorrow Legion allies. This is you've got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but you've also got, what was her boyfriend's name?
God,
it's been so long.
Anyways, the good vampire, right?
Angel?
And so Angel, that's it. My family, we love Buffy. We love Buffy. But so she's got Angel, right? And he's the quintessential vampire that didn't go wrong, and somehow he overcame that spirit within him, kind of like the Manito and in the Weird West stuff. But so then you've got the Necromancer, you've got the Shifter. Now was one of our Kickstarter stretch goals. That's who populates Blood and Banes, because they're on that dark side of things. And so those were the decisions that went in there. And then so what is in that book kind of shaped that. Now as we move forward, so we kind of just divided up North America into different kind of genres and themes. But as we move forward with the world books, well, there's certain iconic frameworks that if you don't have the Tattoo Man in Atlantis, then is it Atlantis, right? Are we hitting some of the important stuff? But the Team Monster Man, is that going to be an iconic framework? I don't know, but my knee-jerk reaction is probably going to say probably it's going to be edges or abilities that you can take, right? As opposed to an entire separate framework, because they have the base core of those two characters is that they're using tattoo magic, right? And that's the main consideration, is we want to make sure that it's interesting and fun to play. And if it's not, then and it doesn't sound like there's enough for something unique there, then it probably should be a Mars or an Edge or something. Does that make sense?
It does. And thank you for the explanation. That actually gives us a little bit of background on that decision-making process, which is cool. And I just want to apologize to everyone. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties, so I apologize for the fact that the screen that you'll see is a little bit weird. So a couple other questions. The Should we continue using the Savaging Your Favorite Riffs ideas document, and is that going to get updated for the Suede to bring in some of these things that some people can't wait for, to bring in the Atlantean
So
person
I mean,
etc.
the document itself probably won't get updated for a while, but as Sean was saying, he's written up something that's going to take its place. We should use that instead.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, for when you want to bring something in from another setting, right?
Mhm.
But I know that some people really liked like the math, like the numbers, the crunchy numbers and stuff that were
Yeah.
there, right? And
Yeah.
I understand that. And at some point, we might update that. But I mean, right now, there's no real point to updating it because we're still in playtest on a lot of this core stuff, right?
Right.
But it is something that I would be very happy to go and do a, Suede edition of it. If that's what, Shane and everybody would like. Yeah, I'm cool. I mean,
It'll be a little way down the road.
yeah, but it's down the road, and we got bigger fish to fry, and I love that. I love the document, right? I mean, like I use it too, and that's
Okay.
one of the first things that I was pointed to by the original design team when they were like, "Hey, you like riffs? You like Savage Worlds? Let's talk." And so they were like, "What do you think about this doc?" And I'm like, "I love it." So but a lot of those numbers have shifted with Suede, right? And
Right.
so I understand where people like to see some hard numbers like that. And so I would like to update that in the future with basically the info that I've got on my stupid, crazy Excel spreadsheet that, I sometimes pass to Simon
You want to
and
give
ask
him
him to give me
nightmares?
yeah.
So, since you guys have tied Morgana into Deadlands, is there any thought of like tying Deadlands into Palladium via or into the Savage Rifts through the England story? And just in general, are there any plans
No,
to bring conversion guides?
no, there's no plan to tie those settings together officially. I
Okay.
mean, players can bring their characters across if that's what they want to do, but that's not something we'll do.
And I will say that, England has so much going on, right? Riffs England,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got its own take on the entire Arthurian mythos
Mm-hmm.
that I love it. I love it. And I think my characters went there like once in my campaigns, right, with my buddies over the years. But it's a really great, and I'm playing in a game that a good buddy got me in with some really cool guys, and we're having fun and running around in that area. My rogue scholar is a bit of a twerp, but we're having a lot of fun with it, and everybody's being really great because we're doing like a triax NGR Navy campaign running on there. But anyways, I just think it's a really great area that has great stories to tell, and I think that it already tells a lot of that Arthurian
Do you do
mythos
English
very
accents?
well. What's that?
Do you do English accents?
No, I just do Texan accents.
Oh, that's a shame.
I actually, you
Missed
know what?
opportunity.
I do like this posh British type accent every once in a while
Can we hear
because
it?
no,
That's really what I was going for.
I tried,
if
guys.
you want me to talk like that, I can, but no, it's terrible. It's really terrible. But the reason I usually talk, I do it at all, is because I'm trying to represent like an upper crust Chi-town accent. And it actually scares me when I try to think about what an upper crust Chi-town accent would sound like 300 and something years from now when we literally call the language American. And so it's nightmare fuel when you really start thinking about it as a linguist.
It's just
But
emojis, right?
because I was a trained linguist, so to me, I was like, oh, so that's what I kind of affected with them when I was, this is we're going to do this and do this, and that's about as far as I go. But sometimes it makes your characters hit that right tone.
Right. All right, Craig's
So-
live, I think, again, because I just heard him.
Am
He's
I
moving.
actually live? Can
I
I
see
be heard?
action. I hear you.
Yep.
Frustration.
So, you want
So
to ask the
question
vehicle
that
question?
Yeah. Specifically with robot power armor.
Yes.
So not specifically vehicles, more along the lines of Samus.
So power armor. Okay.
Yeah, power armor. It seems to be a little weak, especially when piloted by a extra. Is it supposed to be that weak, or should it be, should we be using resilience all the time on a character in power armor, or is it supposed to have more wounds, period, or...
Great question. That's a really good question. So this is something that you like. Sometimes you ask this simple question. I'm like, all these like thoughts and like hundreds of emails and discussions in the early morning with Clint and, emails with Shane. And what about this? And come up to my brain. But this is something that we really wanted to get right. And not that the original design team did a bad job or anything, but yeah, you will notice in the power armor in the TLPG playtest guide that you have right now, you'll notice that there is higher armor and toughness. Okay, quite a bit higher, depending on the size of the power armor suit. Like the Samson is pretty tough, pretty dang tough.
Okay.
And also you'll notice that like heavy body armor, light body armor, medium. But so light body armor basically gives you +1 toughness and then an armor bonus. Medium gives you +2 toughness and an armor bonus. And then heavy gives you +3 and an armor bonus. And then the power armors step up from there and give you MDC protection, right? And with the Samus armor, and the Coalition is renowned in the setting for having the best protection possible, right? For their troops. And then when you get to post 105 PA with the Super Samus, it gets even more out of control. So they're like in the setting, they've got all this molecularly bonded MDC armor, right? And so I think that you're going to see that these suits are a lot tougher. The other thing that you're going to see is that we introduced the nimble ability. And most of these flight-based power armor, maneuver-based power armors, speed-based power armors have the nimble ability so that opponents are -1 to hit them when they're piloted by someone. So I think that that between the two of those things, and then there's also a really great speed modifier chart in relative speed modifier chart in Suede that you can use in narrative scenes where a power armor is just screaming in at 250 miles an hour top speed. Not maneuvering around a battle situation, but just screaming in and dodging and jinking super close to the ground or right above the treetop level. I think that without going and writing a treatise on cover and military weapon targeting systems in the far future of the post-apocalypse, I think that game masters can do some really cool stuff there. And so just keep that in mind. If it feels wrong, then maybe you need to approach the situation a little differently and maybe think, okay, well, if I was a player, how would my Samus characters, right? We would use wolf pack tactics. We wouldn't fly straight at the glitter boy. We would make, if we knew we were up against the glitter boy, or we got his infrared signature or whatever, his targeting computer signature on our stuff with an electronics roll, we're going to approach that situation very differently. Maybe call for backup, maybe do something different. I would say apply tactics, but also you're going to notice that the power armor suits are stronger. They are tougher. I mean, not stronger, but they're literally tougher and they're harder to hit. And I think they should be a lot easier to use on tabletops because now we are also providing equivalent tabletop pace to use in tabletop battles so that they can still have a lot of maneuver, and you're able to can easily switch back and forth between narrative miles per hour and then tabletop maneuverability.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
So you talked a little bit about the Atlanteans and the high seas potentially being the next topic. Is there any sneak peek that you can give us here tonight on the show of something in the works that hasn't been announced yet, potentially?
My only sneak peek that I really want to do is the Secrets of Castle Refuge. Like, I want to do a Castle Refuge book or adventure module that really centers around Castle Refuge and gives you, because when I run, I don't know about you guys, when I run Castle Refuge, I've got the guy in Kazaa. I put a quote for him in one of the books, but I've got him in the motor pool, right? And then I've got this other, I've got this cast of just misfits that all have their own little weird quirks that when you go to the armory at Castle Refuge, when you go to talk to the Northern Gun Trader at Castle Refuge, right? It's a consistent character. And I want to give people stats for that and their hindrances and their edges and their eccentricities and let people have fun in Castle Refuge. And I think there's a lot to mine from Castle Refuge because dwarves delve deep. No, I mean, there's a lot of ideas that I have there that I think we could have a lot of fun with. And it's something that would be very uniquely Savage Rifts, right? And it's an opportunity for us to have something that's very uniquely Savage Rifts and really fun. Now, I don't know if that's going to come before like something like a Kingsdale supplement. But that's something that I really would like to do, Kingsdale or a Secrets of Castle Refuge type book that I think would be a ton of fun.
Awesome. What about you, Simon? Do you have anything that you can peel back the curtains on?
I wish I could tease something as cool as that. I am, as a producer, I am head down focusing on what we've already got to make, and that's my prime focus. I'm looking forward to getting these down out the door, and we can look forward to something exciting.
Yeah, and I will say that one of the things that Simon is like this unsung hero, right? Because for a long time I was like, hey, can we like update all the maps? And then they're like, and then we're doing the Kickstarter, and they're like, man, people are really excited about maps. And I was like, yeah, like we love maps. I don't know what it is. We all have this sickness, right? And so, but Simon's the guy that helps make sure that we can do it and get it done and do it right. And so I think that's really cool, and he really helps out with that. And there's a lot of stuff that it's easy to say, oh, well, that was just a Kickstarter thing and another Kickstarter thing, but there's a lot of work that stuff and running at a high level and making sure that we can do it all at the same time. So that's he's already revealed his hand with the Kickstarter campaign, I think.
Awesome.
All right. Hopefully I can still be heard.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know in Suede we've been moving away from more specific skills to sort of these skill categories, cover a broad spectrum of different things. But Rifts, on the other hand, is probably infamous for the fact that it just has ridiculous numbers of skills. Is there any plan whatsoever to have a sort of, if you want this Rift skill, it's this Suede skill? Sort of a...
It's the conversion sheet.
Yeah. So, the conversion thing, that's why. No. We will eventually have a conversion once we finish all this playtest stuff. We are going to deliver that promise to the fans the best we can. But for instance, like one big question I'm just going to use an example that is in Empires of Humanity. Okay. And it actually went through a lot of revisions because originally it was written for Deluxe and then it was written for Suede. And like in my mind, written for Suede, but I was using mechanics from Weird Wars 2, right? I was like, well, they got demolitions. Well, let's use demolitions. Demolitions is in Deluxe Savage Rifts. There's characters with the demolitions MOS for the Coalition Technical Soldier, right? He has the demolition skill, but now it's not demolitions. Now it's you're using repair, and if there's electronics involved, then it's the lower of electronics and repair. So that's the approach that we're taking because it's really easy to get bloat when there doesn't need to be bloat. And we want to keep the system as elegant as it can be. And I think there are, where we lost some skills. I think athletics is great. I love it. And yeah, I can't tell you how much I love it, but it was like one of my pet peeves. So while I was at university, I actually wrote an RPG for a class as a semester long project, and I had athletics in my RPG, which I didn't tell Shane what I did or anything, right? I mean, this is way before I knew him or anything, but it's like to see that same kind of idea come into Savage Worlds, I'm like, but for instance, how we're handling cybernetics, where it's depending on what you're doing. Are you repairing a piece of cybernetics, or are you performing cybernetic surgery? So now it's going to be the lower of repair or electronics for repairing the cybernetics, or it might be the lower of healing and I think it was electronics for installing the cybernetics. So stuff like that, we're taking that kind of an approach as opposed to just I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but just like skill bloat. And I think that's the adventure edition way to approach these things, and that's the design philosophy we've got moving forward. Now, for instance, in Empires of Humanity for demolitions, there isn't a new skill, but you need the skills and you apply them differently with the demolitions edge. Well, there's two edges, and there's a special ability for the EOD specialist, which is a Mars framework. So he's got spicy home cooking that he can do. So, and so that's how we're handling it, as we step you through. This is what you can do with this edge now that's unlocked for these skills and a way to apply them in this situation. And you can't be illiterate and be an EOD technician. So the smartest guys in the military. I went through training with a bunch of EOD guys, and those guys are sharp. You got to understand a lot of stuff. A lot of really complex stuff, and you got to have just big cojones to be
Yeah, that's an understatement. Personally, we love the less amount of skills. It's just sometimes you're so familiar with a certain type of character, and you're wondering what would that fall under. Which
Absolutely.
Is why just quick, even if it was just online, just a quick conversion document would be cool.
And yeah, I mean, the thing is like, documents stop, and would it be better if I just approach it, if we approach it as we move through the world with world books and supplements? And so I personally, that's the approach I'd like to take, and I think that GMs can do what they'd like for their own home game, right? But I think that once you guys see a lot of the stuff that we've done in the new world books, I think you'll get the gist of how we're approaching it, and I think that it might shift kind of the design philosophy of even the fans, and hope everybody can get on board with it. But it's it's different design philosophies. You want a zillion skills. I mean, I've got my old Rifts character sheets, right? And so you just got all of them right there. Check which ones you got and put your percentage in, and you're good to go, right? But these are just different design philosophies. But the adventure edition, it has very specific philosophy, and I don't want to stray from that if we don't have to.
I love
that's the approach we like to take.
Yeah.
So I know this is way down the line, but I'm someone that loves running the phase world part of Rifts.
Love phase world.
And I was curious if it's included in the licensing agreement with Palladium, because I wasn't sure if it's really considered Rifts or not. And is there future plans to bring that in?
So it is not part of our current licensing agreement with Palladium. Our current licensing agreement is for Rifts Earth, circa, your normal time frames depicted in the Rifts books. For instance, Chaos Earth is technically a completely different role-playing game and setting. They're very closely related, and Kevin is really cool to work with. I'll just be really honest. He's really cool to work with. I understand him wanting to protect his intellectual properties and everything. Absolutely. And so he's been really cool with stuff, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we respect that everyone needs to respect each other, and it's been great. But for instance, Phase World is not part of that currently. The Dimension books are not part of our current licensing agreement. We do have some posts about this, very specific in the Kickstarter, in some of the updates that we did, and then some responses that I have to some of the questions there. So you guys can always go check that out. I'm not trying to write you off. I'm just trying to let you know, I'm just my addled mind right now trying to give you a coherent answer.
No, that's
but-
perfect. Thank you.
But I love the Other Dimension books, and I think they're great. I think that they, for instance, Phase World is definitely strong enough to be its own setting and its own game. And I think that if you love that, I think that you need to go do two things. You need to get everything for the last parsec.
They
And
already
as
do.
soon as we finish the sci-fi companion for Suede, you need to gobble that up.
Yeah.
That's step one. And step two, you need to go watch Battleship Yamato 2199. So that you
Well,
can do it. Sorry.
Yeah, I was really excited when they did the. I think it was a bundle of holding for last parsec. I gobbled that.
Yeah. So I mean, absolutely. And this is where Savage Worlds really shines. And I think it's like this match made in heaven for us to have this licensing agreement, and a really great thing. But we can only produce so much content. We've got 30 years worth of stuff to try and catch up on, and perfectly happy with Rift's Earth right now, because if you asked me, if the question was, hey, you have the license, why aren't you using it? I would be like, we need to finish Earth, man. So that would literally be my answer. So
Cool.
and I don't, that's just because I think that Rift's Earth is really great, and that's and you can, I mean, the Palladium books are out there. They're making them still, right? I mean, right now they run great stuff. So go out and check them out. And it's really easy to just grab the sci-fi companion and have a blast.
All right,
Chris.
So I'm gonna hit you with the hardest question of the night. Hope you guys are prepared.
Bring it.
I want to hear what your current favorite class is, each of you, and why.
Meaning iconic framework in Savage Rifts?
Exactly.
So just me and Simon?
Yep. What's your favorite to play, to work with, whatever you can, whatever way you take that.
Go for it.
Oh no, Simon, you got to go first, buddy.
With my vast experience.
Hey, but you've been reading a lot of crazy stuff, man.
I have read a lot of crazy stuff, but it was tough to beat the character that I played in your game. That guy was crazy. That was a juicer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know these things. And the idea of the burn mechanic, that was phenomenal. I just loved going for it and risking everything on it, as many rolls as I possibly could. That was a lot of fun.
You really go for broke, but it was great, and we had a really great.
I tried to die, but couldn't pull it off in that session.
No,
So
you
you
didn't
played a
manage.
juicer, Simon?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was who do we have? We had Daryl Hayhurst.
See, I was skeptical about the street rat, but Daryl made that work.
Yeah, Daryl was awesome, and then Shane, and then you, and Shane was playing a burster, right? And then I forget, what was the guy's name he was playing, the Linsreal. I just met him that night, a really cool guy, and we just had a blast. But yeah, I understand why you like the juicer. Personally, my character that I've run, so the first one I made for Savage Rifts that I had a lot of fun with was a Psy Stalker Cyber Knight, and something that you can't normally do, right? And so I was like, this dude's like the monster slayer hunter knight, right? Of the post-apocalyptic future. And I love that concept. We were having fun with it. It was really cool. I was all about hunting down the monsters and defeating people in single combat and monsters in single combat. And then one of my buddies he was a Marine. We met at the military and veteran center at UT Dallas, and he played a dragon hatchling. And next thing you know, these characters naturally become like best friends, and it's like the Dragon Slayer with the dragon running around. And I just thought it was such an odd couple pairing that we had a lot of fun with it. I'm currently running a Rogue Scholar, and then he has a Jeeves. Jeeves is his well, I call him Jeffrey, but it's his Jeeves, but it's a combat cyborg is his sidekick. And so that one's been a lot of fun. I would really like to run a Tony Stark Techno Wizard.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Right.
That's kind of funny. I'll kind of save that for when we talk about our game. But I have pieces of Tony Stark kind of embedded in my character, so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. As far as like something that is not normally a character, but I've enjoyed writing, I really enjoyed writing stuff about Argent Goodson,
Okay,
Archie's son.
quote unquote. Yeah. Shane just put in chat that his favorite was the crazy, which he was.
Oh, he was the crazy. Okay, not the burster. Yeah.
All right. So this is another sort of favorite question, but this is more along the lines of, if money wasn't an object and time wasn't an issue, which IP out there would you love to convert to Savage Worlds?
Star Wars.
There we go. All right. Next Kickstarter.
I think that might be a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are homebrews for all kinds of pretty much anything you can imagine. So you know, you can use Savage Worlds to play whatever you like, license or not. Bit of work from the GM, and it's everything you want it to be.
Yep.
I mean, if I had like $1 billion, right? Like, I don't know. I'd really like to do something. I mean, I guess if it has to be like something that's pre-existing, licensed, I'd really like to do something like Warhammer.
Oh, I could get behind that.
But with like mass combat, but like, large tabletop battles and really digging into a lot of that so that there's like this blurred line between, how you're handling the skirmishes. Cause I've played games at cons where, some of these guys, these designers and stuff, we in 2 hours, we finish 6 characters with a new system none of us had played before. We played Sway. We still played Savage Worlds, but we're playing, this new system we never played before. And then we finish a battle with 5 enemy wild cards and like 40 extras and 10 elite extras. And it's just like this on a map with minis. And it was just amazing. Great. You can't do that in any other game. It's so amazing. So, anyways, something like that is something it'd be really fun to work.
Shane just put in Twitch chat that he wants to do Thundar the Barbarian, which I would love to see.
Awesome. So it looks like we're about to get into the chat question and answer. So if you guys got questions, go ahead and toss them in. But I've got one final closing question. So in closing, for someone that's on the edge or ready to make the leap into Savage Worlds, what advice or starting point would you have for them? I've been on mute this whole time, huh?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I'll leave that to you, Sean.
Get the book and play.
Yep.
Just seriously, like, just play, have fun, recreate a movie scene, grab some free adventures online, but man, get a chase scene in there, have a mass battle where the characters are suddenly in the middle of something crazy. Just have fun with it and you will be amazed. A lot of it can seem very different if you come from other gaming backgrounds, because it's using these things that we're used to, the 6-sided dice and the deck of cards and the bennies, the call them bennies, but right, they're actually like poker chips, right? So using this stuff in a way that you might not be used to, but man, it's a great cocktail.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, then let's dive into some of the question and answer, and I think we've got a few in the queue here, so we'll go ahead and start off. Adamantite Art asks, if Roll20 had a way of implementing assets, would you be willing to work more with them?
I'm sure that would be something we consider. Yeah. Sorry, I was getting a message from Shane here.
No problem.
Yes.
Awesome.
Zar Chang Ku, who obviously has no idea what Rifts is, ha ha ha. The playtest version of the revised player guide's been about 3 weeks. The next step.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. You cut out there.
So the playtest version of the revised Tomorrow Legion player guide has been out for about 3 weeks.
Mhm.
What's the next step?
So the next step is to get the first of the world books out and available in playtest as well. That's going to be the Arcana Mysticism book. That's coming really soon. We're hoping to get that up. I'm reluctant to say when. I'm hoping it's going to be up this weekend. So that's my aim, is to get that one wrapped up. And then we're going to go back and put together, compile all the feedback that Sean's been introducing and putting into the player's guide, and get a new version of the player's guide up as well. So those are the next 2 steps.
Okay. Cool. Craig, you want to do the next one?
Yep, I was about to. Yay. Spotty Jungle Cat asks, are we going to get a Palladium Universe workbook like Palladium Fantasy, Ninjas and Super Spies, After the Bomb, Beyond the Supernatural?
A workbook?
World book.
Oh,
I
world.
think
Oh,
is what
it's
it was
probably
meant,
supposed
what it
to
was
be
meant
World
to be.
Book.
Yes.
I was like, workbook. What is
Yeah.
something I missed
Like a
out?
trapper.
I was just reading what it said.
No.
so-
Yeah, cool. I was just confused. So you're saying they're asking, are we going to do other Palladium intellectual property?
IPs. Yeah.
So that's not covered by the license. So no,
Yeah.
not something we can do.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff in Savage Rifts, and if you really like some of that stuff, there's a lot of analogs if you like a certain type of gameplay, right? That we are trying to facilitate. So like Last Parsec, Sci-Fi Companion, Superpowers Companion, Poor Companion. There's a lot of things in there, Fantasy Companion, that are other settings, right? That like Deadlands. I think that there's a lot of options to do something very similar to what you might find. Or the racial build rules just for mutant animals and stuff, right? Or other types of mutants that you can do a lot of really great stuff and create stuff that maybe you're used to having in Rifts in Rifts for Savage Worlds.
Cool.
And while I know I'm not Pinnacle, I'm just, the GM here. As someone who's played a lot of different worlds, if you have the books for Palladium Fantasy, then just take the core Savage Worlds rules and play with that background.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Yes.
I mean, you don't need to do much conversion if you're just doing a Palladium Fantasy game. You just play, oh yeah, I'm going to use all the Palladium Fantasy background stuff, and we're just going to do this as a vanilla Savage Worlds game.
Right. And the one thing is, for instance, with these new world books, for instance, in Arcana and Mysticism, we have the Savage Rifts version of elves, dwarves, orcs, right? With the background that fits the Rift setting, so that you know how they fit into the world. And we also have we're working on Arcane Background Gifted, which is a totally new Arcane background in the Adventure Edition. We're leveraging that to represent your superheroes types characters. And I know that people are going to be like, well, I'll wait till I get the superpower companion, right? But I mean, in the meantime, we are trying to give you something that you can totally run with straight out the box in this new set of 7 books. I'm not sure exactly where some of these little items might fit in, but we really are trying. Simon and I have already talked about this, and these are things that we want. We're listening to the players. We want to make sure that you have those options, and Savage Worlds does it all. So mechanically, especially, you can change the background and setting. But
Awesome. The next question comes from the Skycon. He writes, "Rifts is good for post Cataclysm. Is it good for pre Cataclysm? And what Rifts materials already exist to help me flesh the idea out? Earth of Old is not out of the question." And then he talks about Atlantis books, which you mentioned.
Okay. So the question is just, can you use Savage Rifts to do pre-Cataclysm stuff?
Yep.
It's exactly what I think I talked about a little bit earlier about that I've been running at cons to just introduce people. And also they're totally my guinea pigs. I was totally play testing a lot of these rules, right? It's like, here you go. Here's blood and gore, and you don't realize it. And, but I mean, they were totally fighting Broadkill and Neuron Beasts. I just didn't tell them it's a Broadkill or a Neuron Beast, right? I just described it to them, and we played through it. And I took the armor, there's actually, if you want to do something that is, this legacy, like Republican NEMA type armor or something that dates from before 109 PA, then I've got outlines for that in Empires of Humanity, so that you can do the stuff that you would find in like the Rifts sourcebook revised, sourcebook 1 revised. So that is absolutely something that you can do, and you can totally use this. And man, you could catapult Rifts 300 years further in the future and see what it's like to play after the four horsemen of the apocalypse have decimated Earth. Or you could rewind and let's play through the 2nd century of the Dark Age, or let's rewind more. I mean, I think you can do all of that with the Savage Rifts material. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Chris, I lost it. I can't find it.
I got it for you.
Go.
Spotty Jungle Cat asks again, will there be more comprehensive animal rules?
I missed the last part.
Comprehensive. What's that?
Animal rules.
Animal rules? Are we
in terms of dealing with animals, I'd assume? And
like mutant animals?
Mutant animals.
Yep.
Mutant animals. Sorry.
Probably
Empires
mutant animals.
Empires of Humanity has the mutant bat, the mutant rat, the battle cat, and the kill cat, as well as the Psi X alien, which, as we all know, is actually not an alien, but actually human test subjects that they're so deformed they don't even believe they're human anymore. So that's how come we broke up the themes when the Birchers and I were working on these books. We wanted to make sure that what was in each book fit the theme. So the mutants are expanded upon there, and I even have a sidebar talking about some of the other mutants that maybe weren't really big in number in the setting technically. Like there's only a few of the mutant, the Monkey Boys, or like the Ursa Warrior, the big bear mutants. But I do refer players to the awesome build rules in Adventure Edition and Lone Star, Rift's Lone Star.
Nice. I'm looking forward to the Battle Cat specifically, personally. So Og Ben Dog asks, when will version 2 of the Player's Guide come out, or will a second book come out first?
The second book. The second book will come first. So it'll be the Arcana Mysticism will be put up first, and then we're going to go back and put up a second version of the Player's Guide, and then move on to Blood and Banes after that.
Okay.
We're going to make maximum effort to get playtest books into your hands as soon as possible.
That's awesome. Chris, you want to do Zytotix?
I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. any plans for
the Zytikic plans?
The
they're
pronunciation
Blood and
changed.
Banes.
They're in Blood and Banes. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
They're in Blood and Banes. You got all of them. I mean, I don't know if there's a major type that we miss. We've got like the nanny, the all the leapers, the young queen, old queen. There's adventure material. I mean, it's we even got in Empires. I listed the ticket bounties costs. You bring in a head. There's how many credits they'll give you. No questions asked. The coalition. I don't know. So yeah,
You got a menacing look in your eye when you say that.
Well, it's a funny thing because like the thing where about in the original material where the coalition knows that the Zytikic expansion and plague is like such a problem that they don't even care if it's magic users bringing in the heads, as long as the person they actually interface with is human or acceptable to them, then they don't even care who they're associated with, which normally that's like big no, but they're just like happy to have Zytikic getting killed. So
Nice.
they kind of the agents that are passing out the bounty money are like pretty chill, which is very unusual for the coalition.
So, do you think that'd be a potential to build rapport and get your way in as a DB into the coalition? Or do you think GMs can start leveraging things like that?
I mean, you're not going to get very far past the burbs at best, unless, I mean, in the original material, they basically talk about human-like DBs might be allowed in if they're, you know, like the slave of a visiting dignitary. So I didn't really like dive into that with comprehensive modifiers, or anything, but I think that the mutant, we were updating the outsider hindrance to be a mutant hindrance, so that make sure that it's very clear and specifically for the interesting kind of place that mutants have in the Rift setting, has been updated. And we've also updated a lot of the things with their physiology, that how that might apply to how they they're affected in the society. So I think that there will be a lot more fodder for game masters to use as they role play with very diverse groups in really interesting situations as we move even away from North America. Again, trying to lay that foundation. So I think there's a lot of really cool stuff with DBs or mutants.
Cool. That sounds awesome.
Cool.
Greg, you want to do that one, or you want me to take one?
Um,
I'll take it.
okay.
I'll take one. Blessing Graham asks, can you talk about AI construct character creation rules?
Blaze, hi. And Blaze is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I do this right. I'm gonna up file because I just want to step through. So this is just kind of like I like to give just like a little
Oh, that's Blaze Ingram. Sorry.
yeah, it's Blaze. So the basic idea with the construct. So everyone's familiar with the Rift Sourcebook 1, which captured my imagination because my best friend built an Android character using it. But
Nice.
nope, and I was totally he had such a cool idea with it that I totally let him take a glitter board, and that's how bad of a game master I was in like middle school. Um, but he played it to a T. I was like, you can never show a character sheet. You can't show off these skills, right, that you're getting because you're or this android. And we actually had this entire campaign where after a year, his character was revealed outside of his army, save some guys that they were fighting as a ticket as a mercenary company, and they got pinned down while they were attacking this hive. And everyone thought he was dead, right? He just ran through this hail of Zytikic weapons fire, and it tore off his android exterior. And it's this, they all realize that their buddy is this android, and it was like this hidden gem that we've been doing for like a year, playing like all summer.
Oh, man.
Anyways, so I love that. I love that framework and stuff. And so when and then I had a friend who did something similar where he built a really interesting intelligent construct as his character in my campaign, and we used like the android rules and did some fun stuff with that, using the custom race options. But that all engendered creating a new framework that's the intelligent construct. And so you go through and you need to pick. You have some core edges and hindrances, like you're a construct, you're inorganic, you're outside, you have outsider major, you're wanted. Once someone figures out what's going on with you, you deal with technical difficulties and malfunctions. But then you go through and you step through what the character is. Are they an artificially intelligent construct, or are they an intelligence or essence that was transferred into the construct, and that can modify some things. And then you choose a technology system, like your technology base. So is this a technological science type intelligent construct, or is it a techno wizard creation, or is it an arcane system like a living golem? and that changes how you interact with like healing and repair and stuff like that. And then you determine the frame, the size. I mean, it's very similar to that. You step through the type of locomotion, your senses. I mean, you could do it everything from an R2D2 to like this living golem, or some techno wizardry thing from another dimension.
That's awesome.
That's like the kind of like the Transformers in the new movies where they've got like Energon and they're like this living metal. That's what my buddy did. So I wanted to make sure that we just kind of like this. It was Savage Worlds. Okay, you can do whatever you want, and then you go in and you determine features, and that basically leverages sci-fi companions types of abilities that you could get. And then also I converted over a lot of the different crazy stuff that you could buy for your intelligent construct in Rifts, where all types of stuff. So you could have you've seen that what is that Bicentennial Man? You've seen that movie with
Robin Williams. Yep.
So you could actually
Classic.
build an android that can eat food because it has a bioreactor. I mean, it's crazy. So it was one of those ones that I really need to get out into the wild. But we have a whole sidebar that takes up a page and a half. So it's more than a sidebar, where it's like, this is how you build the Sumerian renegade. You can take these construct rules, these intelligent construct rules, and you can build a Sumerian renegade, which is, for people who don't know it, the Sumerians are an enigmatic race of cyber warrior women that dominate the east coast of the United States. And so you can build a renegade from that society, and it's stepped through right here for everybody to use. But you can also do all types of other just crazy riff stuff that I don't think you could do otherwise, right? And it's really just leveraging the flexibility of the Savage World system and the stuff, the options that you would see out of the Sci-Fi Companion of the race build rules, with all the crazy options that I could think up with, or that was in the Palladium source material.
So kind of.
So you've got no plans for that?
It's a small part of the book. I think it was like 500 words. No.
So one of the things that caught my attention, which was another user submitted question by Adamantite Art, you kind of mentioned the living golems and whatnot. Do you have any plans for handling rune weapons or intelligent weapons and artifacts?
So step one, right? We have this really great techno wizardry base that we've got we're revamping the techno. We've done a lot of work with the techno wizardry system, and please give us like honest feedback, because literally before, and I don't think it's just a lot of stuff going on with techno wizards, right? But I know a lot of people, they were like, hey, can you fix the techno wizardry stuff? And I'm like, well, what's broken? Like, can you tell me which part? And they're like, well, I don't understand it when I read it. And I'm like, and it's funny because some people were like, oh, techno wizard is amazing, right? And then other people were like, I don't get it, I just don't. And so we went through and we've really like worked on that, and tried to again set this real foundation, because now that is the backbone for minor and major magic item creation in Arcana and Mysticism.
Oh,
so that's your middle
Nice.
step towards minor and major rune weapons. So I can't. I mean, I'm not. We're still reviewing these manuscripts right now, and we're in playtest. So I really don't want to like speculate exactly how we're going to handle rune weapons in Atlantis, because if anyone is unfamiliar with the setting, rune weapons are like, my sword talks to me. It used to be a demon prince, and it drinks souls, and we just slaughter everything, right? So,
Yep.
And it flies and stabs people on its own, and it's crazy. So rune weapons are like really powerful. I mean, more than artifacts, right? They're rune weapons. There's something special that are indestructible in the setting. So that is something that I don't want to like speak too much to, but we're building towards it. And I think that we're going to have something. I think that the end, I have some ideas, but I don't like just talk on my butt. But
Cool.
I think we're making some good progress toward it.
All right.
And you pay
Okay.
for it, right? I mean, if you build these magic items, you're paying money, you're applying skill rolls, right? It's not, we're not just, and Kevin, when he reads this stuff, he was like, hey, this Knight of the White Rose, you have the White Rose cuttings. The way this is written, I'm worried that it could be gamed. And I was like, well, thanks. Well, we'll handle that, right? And so there's a lot of eyes on this stuff from every direction, from people that are less familiar with Rifts or less familiar with Savage Worlds, and now the players are getting their hands on it. So I think we're going to have some really cool stuff for you guys on that front.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Okay.
So one of the things that we really wanted to talk about is the fact that we've been playing this game
Right.
for a few months now,
Awesome.
and
Yep.
we love this. It has been really fun, and we play our games every other Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific through midnight Pacific. So 6-hour games every other week. And our next game is on the 27th of July. And
Shameless plug because
there's my shameless plug on this channel. So there's my shameless plug. But I did kind of want to talk with Simon and Sean about our game and give them a little background and let them ask some questions about our game specifically. So now I'm going to shut up and turn it over to the GM for a minute. Go ahead.
All right. So at its core, it is still a Rifts game.
Right.
But to a certain degree, because, and of course we mentioned this before we got online, but for everyone who doesn't know, which is people listening on the stream probably, we started off with a session 0 where we did a microscope game. Microscope is this fractal history game where you can go in and you can make changes to history, sort of build out a background to the world. Now, because we did this live, and because we had an audience, and because people pay attention to Twitch, not only was this riffs, but we had a lot of pop culture references being tossed in. I mean, we actually have, there's this little anime that I'm sure you've never heard of called Attack on Titan. I mean, we actually have Titans running around in Rift's Earth.
Yeah.
Other strange things like that, but we actually took Rifts to a certain degree, built out this history that we collaborated on, and Rifts has gone from being everything in the kitchen sink to being everything in the kitchen sink and the drains and, the next door neighbor's house and a little bit crazy. But right now in the story, we have our group of irregulars because one of the things that all of the players said was they didn't want to specifically be part of the Forgotten Legion. So I came up with this sort of idea like a French Foreign Legion type thing. So there are irregulars in Castle Refuge. They're not specifically part of the Tomorrow Legion, but they get hired on to do different tasks.
Okay.
And right now, and so the coalition state of El Dorado has been converted because in the history, the CS is actually falling apart because, well, there's a lot of hate for the coalition in our group, so they wanted to destroy the coalition. Coalition's somewhat falling apart, and so the coalition state of El Dorado became the Republic of El Dorado. And as we've started to play the game, and as they've started running into the Republic of El Dorado, apparently the Republic of El Dorado found a technology cache in New Orleans. And among the things there was a working submarine that they fired a Triton nuclear missile from.
Okay.
So, yeah, a little bit of, some idea of where we're going with this setting.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never pain like that. No, I think that's great. I mean, it's kind of like an alternate history then, and you've got your own kind of custom backstory, but there's like this alternate history of Rifts, and I think that's great. And I know that y'all were asking earlier, like, hey, is El Dorado in Empires of Humanity? And yes, it is. And I think you can still look at the major things that we've got in that book, and you can look all, and then we've still got. I mean, the foes are still statted out, right? And those could be allies or enemies, depending on how your alternate history goes. I think all of this could still really be great material
Oh,
for
yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That sounds
Yeah.
great. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. We have very individualistic characters. Chris, tell them about Keegan.
Oh, jeez. He's a very boisterous rock dwarf that loves to imbibe in alcohol and enjoys playing his bagpipes, and is a cyber knight that loves to go around and spread justice in a fashion that's very merciful throughout the lands. So gets into a lot of mischief.
There's nothing merciful about bagpipes.
Well, it's one of our very iconic games. He actually has it as unskilled, so he plays it unskilled.
Oh man!
But he succeeded. Was it 5 or 6 times in a row?
Yeah, I think I exploded a couple times too. So
and yeah,
exploded dice or
exploded
dice. Yep.
That's a relief.
I think I rolled like a 14 on one of them, or on an unskilled. Yeah, it was crazy stuff.
Yeah, so that part's been hilarious. And of course we all do our bad voices.
Of course, it's not a role playing game if you don't.
Yeah.
I play a Tremador techno wizard named
Nice
Turag that talks like this. Because he's old, he has deliberate as a hindrance and things like that. So the only time he speaks in full speed normal human type voice is when he's on his wingboard.
Gotcha.
And other than that, he speaks terribly slowly and drives everyone absolutely crazy.
And he's got the neck of a giraffe.
Well, yes, it's a Tremador. Yeah. But yeah, and we've had a lot of fun creating really out there techno wizard devices. So
that's what it's for, man. And Savage Worlds doesn't.
It's been a blast.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we also have a female crazy who anytime she pretty much gets excited or it goes into battle, plays Ride of the Valkyries at full blast.
As one does.
Great.
We have a Atlantean mind mage who is our healer that has a history of killing things. Like his backstory is that he once killed a Splugor slaver on a perfect shot with a green energy bolt out of his hands, or emerald, sorry. And he has basic nightmares about that type of stuff.
Okay.
And but so he tries to be good and heal, but occasionally he's called upon to kill something again, and he one time went catatonic because he actually succeeded again. So he's been great.
It's one of these things where I was talking with the player when we were creating his character, talking about exploding dice and how they can keep going infinitely.
Right.
And so he was like, well, wouldn't it be funny if one time in the past this character had one of these situations where it was just a ridiculous, over-the-top 200-point explosion on a die and he took out some major villain. And we've essentially built his entire character around a game mechanic, but from the character's perspective of how that happened.
Crazy fluke, and he doesn't want to get put in that situation again. Yeah, that's awesome. So he's got this reputation he doesn't want. That's awesome.
Oh, Yeah, and so he's got an entire tribe of Atlanteans chasing after him because they think he's the chosen one. In fact, so because you can take any edge, and he actually rolled on one of the tables that gave him a legendary edge. He ended up taking a sidekick as a starting character. So he's got the princess of this tribe who follows him around everywhere, trying to get him to go back to the tribe so he could lead.
Nice.
That's crazy.
And our last player is a human Mars character that's a cybernetic
He's a
guy
street
that
rat.
is a
Well, he
street rat
started
or
life as a
city rat.
street rat.
Yeah, he
City
started
rat.
right as a city rat.
He's bought
He
some
started
upgrades.
Yeah.
a lot of upgrades. He's actually maxed out on his strain right now.
Nice.
And he originally had taken the upgradable. We've got to change him over to the new one, which now gives him a psychological impairment. But
And to give you some idea of his personality, his name is Rex Lizathan.
Nice.
If you ever watched the A-Team,
Yes.
we likened his character to Face.
Okay. Well, I think
Yeah,
that he'll like some of the. You guys will probably enjoy some of the stuff because of cyber in there that like the cyber disguises and stuff like that. So.
Oh, great! That'll be awesome.
That's awesome.
That'll be awesome.
So looks like we're coming to the end here. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit more, a little bit before the show, but Simon, Sean, you guys got any projects or anything you want to bring up before we head out here?
Well, the current books are pretty all-encompassing right now.
Yep.
The Pinnacle has an anthology of fiction based on settings that Pinnacle settings that'll be coming in the future. But right now, Rifts is the prime focus, and that's what we're working on.
Yeah, for me personally, same. I mean, right now, this is I've been really excited, and it's been really great to work more and more with the Pinnacle team as Savage Rifts has expanded and grown, and now we're doing this really awesome revised edition for Suede for the Adventure Edition, and so I really want to make sure that I keep my focus on this. There's other stuff I want to do in the future, I'll have some fun with that, and but yeah, for now that's where I'd like to leave it, and I hope that everybody will take a look at the forums, the Pinnacle Entertainment forums. Come in, give us your feedback. We really want you guys to be a part of the playtest. We're taking the time. We want to make sure to do this right. So this is the savagest of Rifts and the most riftiest of Rifts games for people to play. That we can all have a lot of fun for years to come using a really solid foundation. And I hate the idea that maybe somebody wouldn't get their word in about something that's a really great idea that they would like to share with us, or some really good feedback before we get it. So I read every single post on the forums, feedback forums,
Nice.
and then I just pass off all the changes to Simon. And
There you go.
but
we just keep making the fun.
yeah.
Well, I just want to say we really appreciate the fact that you guys definitely really spent a lot of time with us tonight and answered a lot of questions. I hope a lot of Savage Rifts fans get stuff out of this. And Hippo has one last question.
Yep. For those that are looking to potentially content creators or people that are doing any games at cons, what's the best way to get a hold of Pinnacle and get that information either out or find some ways to work with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best person to talk to would be Jody. I'm just digging out her email right now, but it would be pegjody@gmail.com, and
Oops.
she will be able to help us
All right.
get the word out about whatever you're playing. Excuse me.
So, pegjody@gmail.com, you said?
No.
Oh.
Info from Shane. Info
Oh,
at
I apologize. Yeah, Shane's
peginc.com.
updated. Site.info@pegging.com.
All right, ignore the. Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Shane. Yeah, again, thank you, Sean and Simon, for your time tonight. We definitely enjoyed our chat, and I'm sure that the chat did as well. So we really appreciate it, and
Well, thanks for having me on.
appreciate you guys for coming out here.
It's great to chat with you guys. I'm glad y'all are enjoying everything, and appreciate all the feedback too and questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been a blast to play.
Definitely. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. For those that wish to rewatch parts that they may have missed, or for our YouTube viewers that are watching it after the fact, we hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you guys soon. Don't forget to follow Pinnacle on Twitter, and we will see you guys there, and check out the forums as well. Have a great night, everyone. Good night.